Hi everyone, welcome Mark.
Thanks.
I've heard a rumor you're writing James Dalton's book.
I am, and it should be done by the end of the month, and it's going to be in exclusive books, exclusively, the whole of November.
Okay.
Thanks to Rugby Media.
And interesting book?
Yeah, I think it's the most powerful, raw, honest reflection of a South African sport personality that I would have read in terms of how he's spoken about his life. You get biographies and autobiographies, and they're very much about the games and play 10, 1, 5. Yeah. They go into certain things, but they don't really go into things. And he's really opened up and about the time that he spent with the Springboks, about his comeback, but more so about his life. And he certainly is fronting a life that has been lived. So go out and get it. It's going to be fascinating. It's called Bulletproof. Yeah. And and I think the last of the iconic bad boys of South African rugby, and but very different sides to him. A complex individual, but a likable individual as well. So I've enjoyed writing it. Pressure deadlines, but I think it will be an enjoyable read, and whoever reads it will have a context to South African rugby at the time, but also the South African rugby player at the time, and more so to him.
I would imagine he's a pretty complex character.
Yeah, no, and he's been through a hell of a lot, and so buy it for a life story, because it's as much about that as it is about his rugby career.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, everybody comes out with an autobiography. A lot of people come out with these things that have nothing to say, other than regurgitating, like you say, stats and stuff like that. So I hope it's better.
No, he's got a lot to say, and I mean, he's got big opinions, obviously, on every guy he's played against, everyone who's coached him, his teammates, his social circle. It is really, he's got, obviously, his life has been a lot about his friendships with a lot of guys in the underworld, and that complete contrast of the Springbok rugby player that played in one of the best Springbok teams of all time, achieved a lot of things. That's what happens on the field, and what happens off the field is he goes into another world, and it makes for fascinating reading. And I think people who read it should read it to be informed, and read it as a novel as opposed to read it with a judgment, because it's certainly not a justification of his life. It's very much a reflection.
Okay, cool. I look forward to reading that when it comes out. It's coming out at Christmas. Yeah,
it's to be in exclusive books on the first week of November. And for the whole of November, you can get it in exclusive books, and then afterwards you'll probably be able to get it everywhere.
Oh, cool. That's great. Let's chat about the upcoming Rugby World Cup, and Rassie's selections, and who you fancied to do well in the tournament and go far. What do you think of the team Rassie selected?
Look, I think it's a good squad. I think it's a particularly good 23. I'm not totally convinced it's the 31 is as good as everyone's making it out to be, and we saw that in that match against Argentina. On paper, good named players in that, but it really looked like if you go back into the 90s when we toured with a box side and a midweek box side, it looked like a midweek box team that just didn't want to be there, just wanted to get the hell out of there. They played like 15 individuals, understandably so in the context of the game. But I think there is a big difference between his A and his B team. Yeah. Just like I think there's a massive difference between New Zealand's A and B team. When the edge they've had in the past is that you would think their two teams could have been fairly similar. So I think whoever has the greater depth in the 31, not the 23, will be telling in the last 4. But if you look at the pools, I think we can pick the top 8 already. The key is who's going to be playing who from that top 8. And just before we went on air, we looked at the 2 bigger pools, which is where Australia and Wales are, and then obviously where France, England and Argentina are. So who comes 1 and 2 there, because that's who they'll play, and obviously whoever loses, assuming Ireland will be top of their pool, because they've probably got the easiest pool. Whoever loses will play them in a quarter-final. So I think Rassie's picked a side that definitely can go through to the semi-final, and then from there it becomes a tournament within a tournament, and a bit of a lottery. And if we've looked at results over the last 2 years, there's really been a score in it in a lot of those matches in the Southern Hemisphere, and also when they went on tour last year. So the most open World Cup, we go there with confidence, we go there with form, but I would just caution and say that it's not a fait accompli that it's ours. A lot of people seem to think it is already.
But isn't that an incredible transformation in 14 months since Rassi, or 15 months since Rassi took over. And you watch the press conferences now. There's laughter. There's just a different. There's not the doom and gloom that was under the Alistair regime.
Yeah, it looks like there's someone in charge of the team, and they've had a plan from the moment he came back from Ireland. He's been very particular and clear about his leadership group. Even when Siya Kolisi was coming back and he had to play that match for Western Province, he said if he comes through it, he's captaining the side, he's taking them to the World Cup, regardless how Eben had done, regardless how Dwayne had done. And if you look at all the very successful teams, especially at World Cups, the coach has been insistent. That's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. And if 1 gets suspended, 2's injured, and 3 comes in and scores 30 points, and 1's available next week, 1 comes back into the team. There's never been this thing of, how do I drop a guy who scored 30 points? If you have a plan, you drop him because that guy was supposed to be there. So I think that's what Rassi has got right.
Who's then? Can I ask you this question? Who's number 1 in your opinion as scrum half for the World Cup?
Faf, without a doubt. Yeah, Faf without a doubt. And I think you may even find. I wouldn't be surprised if he turns in a big game. He turns a little bit more to Reinach than he does Jantjies. I just have that sense that he could go that way. I think if you look at the starting 15 that played against New Zealand, in New Zealand, that's without a doubt his best 15. Mapimpi wouldn't have been there if Jantjie was fit or / hadn't failed the drugs test. I still think though, when people say who would you pick and who wouldn't you pick, I just am such a fan of Dylan Lates as a player.
Me too.
I think he can play 15, he can play on the wing, he can come in and play at the fly-off channel. Somewhere along the line, Rassi just doesn't rate him, and I don't know why. He prefers a different type of winner. But yeah, so I would look there, and then I haven't been as impressed with Galant this season as when he came on the scene, and I think Damian Willemse offers more, and I know he's been injured, but he's come back, he's played 2 matches now, and I know he's on the standby list, but I would like to have seen him there. I would have liked to have seen Rassi entrust him and give him that extra week to get fit, or extra 2 weeks.
Who's on the standby list?
He's got Andre Esterhuizen at 12 on the standby list. A lot of the players who have played, he hasn't confirmed the 6 or 7, but he says they come out of the mix that have been playing in the Rugby Championship. He explained the Esterhuizen omission as he wasn't good enough to be picked ahead of those who were, and Steyn offers so much more, and Steyn was always going to be in his World Cup squad. He said as long as he was fit and he had to integrate him back into the mix, he can play him at 10, play him at 12, and even have to play him at 15 if he can. But for me at the moment, he's that ideal guy to come in the 41st minute of a test match and change the complexion of it. But he said he just needed to see if Esterhuizen could manage the opposition in the Rugby Championship if he has to come into a tournament, and he feels he can. I would dispute that. I think he's very one-dimensional, big, physical. I think we need a little bit more there. I also have concerns at 10 in that Alton has played well when the pack goes forward, but Alton doesn't command the kind of respect against a team like New Zealand that Pollard does. And Pollard does have a Dan Carter-like kind of presence. He was riddled with injuries for 2 seasons, but you're now seeing the guy that won 2 under-20 World Cups, was player of the tournament when they lost it in New Zealand, seen as the best under-20 fly-off in the world. And I thought he's been outstanding in the Rugby Championship. So I think we've picked a bloody big, strong, hard pack. The only question mark there, conditions, pace of the game. Could a team like New Zealand in that first match pick a lighter kind of pack and actually run us for 70 minutes and test our conditioning? So it's all set up for this wonderful opening game where in the past we would have just written it off and said New Zealand will win it. How do we play against Ireland? The fact that no one knows who's going to win it, I think it's fascinating. No one knows who's going to win between Australia and Wales. That's fantastic. There's still doubt as to whether it will be England or France in that game. So those are the key contests that come up early in the tournament. Then it's going to be a bit of a fun ride for 2-3 weeks where you know what the results are going to be. And then the playoffs, I think the last 3 weeks of this tournament are going to be worth the 6 weeks. That's where it all really starts. And I can't see any upsets. The top 8 teams in the world will be there.
Wow. Okay. For me, I think when I look at the betting on this tournament, you've got you've got South Africa and England 9-2 on offer, and you've got New Zealand at 13-10. So they've had a very indifferent season, or a couple seasons now, pretty indifferent. And they've only drifted out a small bit. For me, on paper, and from what I've seen, and just the atmosphere around the camp, those 2 extra weeks not qualifying for Super Rugby beyond the first playoff round, has given Rassie a wonderful opportunity to galvanize that team. And he's made some great decisions.
Good coaches are usually defined by their selections. Yeah. And that's been one of the key elements of Steve Hansen's success, is the way he's made his selections. And you're finding the similar kind of thing with Rassie, is you actually understand what he's doing. You can see the combinations that he's putting together. Yeah. And what I've also enjoyed is how open he's been with the public and the media about his selections.
Yes.
Steve Hansen said Sonny Bill Williams, if he's fit, will go to the World Cup. Within the group, he does something that maybe not be obvious to the eye, and they need him there. Frans Steyn was going to go to the World Cup, regardless. Siya Kolisi was going as his captain. Kieran Reid is going as his captain. So they make those calls. They also let the players know that Skulk Brits was coming in to mentor, to bring that kind of experience, to provide a player-coach role. But good enough that if both hookers went down in the week of the final, he can step in and actually play in that final. It's not a 21-year-old kid who's played one test. So I've liked his planning, I've liked his thinking. Again, each coach will have a certain preference in terms of a player. But I think by and large, he's got it so right in terms of what he's done over the last 18 months. And what I enjoy is he hasn't veered from that plan. And he's also very quickly recognized if he's felt he's picked someone with potential, they haven't come through, he's sent them back to the Currie Cup, let them know that you're not in the frame just yet. He hasn't hung on to a player to prove to the country that he got it right every time. He's very quick to say, I think I got it wrong with this player, and he's not quite up to there yet, and he needs more conditioning, he needs greater communication skills, etc., and off he goes. Yeah. You know, and the same when you look at Hansen last year with Liam Marpy. When everyone was shock horror, why is he going home? He said, because he doesn't communicate with his 10. Half the reason Barrett's not as good as he is because there's not a Sonny Bull or a Crotty next to him. Yeah. And we've told him to go work on that. So you've also got to trust a coach. His job's on the line to make a more informed decision that we would do it from the sidelines. But I like...
Not sure if Hansen's job's on the line.
No, he's finishing off now and taking over from Jake actually in coaching in Japan. But what I do like is that there's, especially in the climate this year, when you see how poor the Proteas were in the Cricket World Cup, there's always this doom and gloom over Bafana. In terms of male sports, it's wonderful to see a national side go to a World Cup where there's no political talk about transformation, representation. There's not doom and gloom that they haven't won a game. They've won the Rugby Championship, albeit a shortened version, but they won it. Yeah. They're a popular team, and the 2017...
The world needs a strong Springbok team.
Oh, without a doubt. And you know, you speak to the New Zealanders, they're thrilled that South Africa is strong because it forces them to become stronger again.
Thrilled and terrified.
Yeah, thrilled and terrified. But I looked at the British media who hate the fact that New Zealand have dominated for the last 10 years because the only team who could have countered that was South Africa. Yeah. And they were like, Stephen Jones wrote, thank God they're back. It's like, and it's, you know, John Hart, the former All Black coach, said he sees an All Black South Africa final regardless of that opening game. And he says it's what the world needs now, and it's the two right teams to be there. And, you know, Hansen said in his...
Not if you're a Welshman, you know.
And Hansen said in his press conference, he said, you know, the pressure that every team's going to feel there, because he said there are 6 teams who rightly feel they can go there and win it. Yeah. And they've got the playing pedigree, and they've got the results over the last 2 years. I'm worried about Wales, though, when it comes to that last 4. Do they mentally have it to win it?
No. No. But you know what? It's been it's been 12 days that we're number 1, you know? So I never thought in my lifetime that would have happened, ever. I mean, to me, so it's and people think that I'm bragging about it and stuff. I'm not. It's like one of those miracles. So do we have no one really has the temperament. Ireland, to me, are the ones I'm really worried about. I think that they'll get to the quarters, and they're going to be pumped, like beaten by 20, 30 points in the quarters. They don't have the depth.
Well, it happened in the last World Cup when Argentina smashed them.
Yeah.
In the quarterfinals, they had 2 or 3 big injuries.
And Argentina, in the last, I mean,
Haven't won in how many?
They've won 3 out of the last 23 games, which I think it's about 15% or something win ratio. So how, you know, that's why I think France definitely going to go through in that group.
Well, France have definitely improved as well
Yeah.
from where they were, 9 to 8.
Yeah. Look, it's going to be a great Rugby World Cup.